Hey y'all, it's Livy Redden. Welcome back to Today is the Future. So today I wanted to talk about two things, two mindsets and lessons that I've learned over pursuing this career path that I've been on over the past 5 years, 4 to 5 years. And the two mindsets that I think have really contributed to my success. And I wanted to share these things because, especially over the past year, I've had many, many people reaching out to me, asking me how I've kind of done what I've done. You know, the TED Talk, publishing a book, having a wide branch of connections, and, you know, running this podcast, building the social media following. Like, how did these things come into fruition? And I felt particularly inspired to record this today because I gave a keynote talk over the weekend. And as I was speaking to people that were coming up to me after, some people asking me, like, I would love to do what you're doing. I think these two lessons are probably the core things that people that maybe are interested in doing what I'm doing, or have something they feel pulled to do, but have something holding them back from really making that jump. I would say these are the two things you need to hear and you need to know. And the first thing is actually something that I wrote in my book. And I've been thinking about this chapter a lot lately and how much I still really resonate with this, even though I wrote it 4 years ago in 2020. If you don't know, I started writing my book, had the idea for my book in 2019, started writing it in 2020, published it in 2022. And this has really been coming up for me because over the past really year and a half is when I've really started to experience the tipping point of my career success, particularly in regard to what I would like to be doing full time, which is the mission of bringing mental and emotional skills to teens and 20-somethings, and also building community around growth and healing to give people a space of belonging. And that has still yet to be my full-time job. My full-time job, if you don't know, is marketing. I run I'm a freelance marketer. I do copywriting and video consulting. And it's really been over the last year and a half where I've become very close to being able to go full time into this. And that's been after years and years of labor. And all that to say, this tipping point that I've reached has really hammered the nail in for me. I think that's the phrase. Hammered it in. What I talk about in the book. And this comes from chapter 19 titled Take the Seat. This chapter is still such a core of who I am and my philosophy as a person and how I go about my day to day. This is probably one of my favorite chapters in the book, actually. And this is what I say. So this is one of the two things that I think first and foremost advice I would give people if you're interested in doing something along the vein of what I do, and the key and a key to success in your career that I've learned both firsthand and through interviewing dozens of hundreds of very successful people. And I'll read a little bit of this chapter for you. I say, we see an opportunity and the potential for it to turn out amazing, and we plow it down by our fear that it won't work out, so we leave it for someone else to claim. We fear failure. We fear that this opportunity might prove that we aren't good enough, just as we feared. On the contrary, we might also fear even more so the realization that we are good enough, that if the opportunity plays out in a positive way, our dreams then move from improbable to possible for us. And at that point, the realization strikes that it's now our responsibility. We are now in charge of the fruition of our potential, because we can't let ourselves off the hook because we've already seen what is possible. That's the exact. I actually don't think I even resonated with that then as much as I do now, of like seeing the tipping point of your potential and being like, oh my gosh, so I could like actually do this. And then it's like, well, we'll see. Like it gets the possibility of true success once you see that the door is there. For some reason, it becomes super scary because it's like, I know it can happen, and am I gonna have the capacity to grasp it? And then I say in the book, Angela Duckworth, an incredible psychologist and popular author, quotes Friedrich Nietzsche, German philosopher and poet, in her book Grit. With everything perfect, we do not ask how it came to be. Instead, we rejoice in the present fact as though it came out of the ground by magic. And I expand on this in my book, and I say, we'd prefer to believe someone amazing or incredibly skilled came from magic or without extreme effort of repeated mundane tasks. Why? Because, as Nietzsche said, quote, our vanity, our self-love results in the cult of genius, for if we think of genius as something magical, we are not obliged to compare ourselves and find ourselves lacking. To call someone divine means, here, there is no need to compete, close quote. Essentially, what Nietzsche is saying here is that if we choose to mythologize natural talent, it places the rest of us in the clear. We're off the hook from holding ourselves to the standard of ever possibly achieving such a skill or task. It gives us the excuse to remain in the status quo. So this kind of leads me to the first lesson that I wanted to talk about, and it is that when someone has something in their life that you would like, or a goal that they've attained that you would like to attain, it is not magic, and it has never been magic. And there were so many mundane tasks and drive and structure, and they also had to say no to a lot of other things to achieve that. And I think the more we give ourselves excuses of why we can't do what that person did, exactly what that quote says, that we can let ourselves off the hook. And, you know, I understand that people have different privileges, people do have different opportunities. However, despite that, if this is something you really want to pursue, something you really want to achieve, it's going to come through mundane tasks. And achieving it is not going to come out of victimhood. It's not going to come out of being angry that we didn't get the cards that the person next to us got, because that's life. And life is not fair. Life has never been fair, and it never will be fair. And, you know, there's certain cards I received that were better than others. Some cards I received that weren't as good as others. And it just is what it is. And I say, what a beautiful performance of self-love and self-respect to look at whatever cards you were handed and spend your life in the mission of self-exploration and seeing what you really are capable of. And also the cool thing about that is when you do those things, you also get the opportunity to gain new cards and pass them on to the people after you, to pass them on to the people around you. And so that is the first lesson where I have really, I mean, I have just seen successful people come from the most just difficult backgrounds. And it really was a matter of them just being like, I don't fucking care. I don't care. This is what I want to do. And I refuse to spend my life being a victim. And I will stand in this stance of self-love and self-respect because I only have one life and I'm going to pursue this thing and do what it takes to reach it. Because really, it is what it is. It is what it is. There is no changing what has already occurred. So what will I do moving forward? That's the one and only question. And then I want to get into the second lesson that I've learned over the years, and one of the second core piece of advice I would give anyone as far as this career route and career success. And before I actually hop into that, I did want to mention, this is something I don't really promote on social media because I like to invite people personally and also people that are most engaged in what I do, such as people that listen to the podcast, read the book, are in the text community, that sort of thing. But I have the next cohort of my Clarity Collective starting mid-October. The slots are almost filled up, but I do have a few spots left, but they're going to probably go pretty quickly here. But I wanted to offer those last few spots to people from the podcast. And essentially, the Clarity Collective is a community, a 3-month community program for people in their 20s. There's 6 90-minute workshops. We also, throughout, there's body doubling, meditation, breath work. You'll get a free copy of my book. And with the podcast, I wanted to offer a discounted version of the program. It'll be in the show notes if you're interested in getting more information about the Clarity Collective. And if you use type in the promo code SOONER, you'll get a massive discount on the program. So all the information for the Clarity Collective is in the show notes. So you can go check it out down there. And then additionally, so the second lesson that I wanted to chat about is that everything takes so much longer than you think it will. It really, really does. Everything in life takes longer than you think it will. And it's so annoying. So annoying. It is so annoying. But I remember I was listening to a podcast years ago. And I mean, I don't as much now, but I used to listen to a ton of business podcasts. And somebody on that podcast said, usually if you're going a sort of entrepreneurial route like this, it takes 2 to 5 years of fairly fruitless labor before you really reach the tipping point. And I think I was about a year and a half in after dropping out of college. And I remember hearing that and finding so much comfort in that. And that became my timeline. It instantly became my timeline. And I've thought about that on a weekly basis since the moment I heard it. I actually don't know who said it, and I don't know what podcast it was on. But 2 to 5 years was my timeline. I said, I will put in 2 to 5 years of fairly fruitless labor. And if I don't reach a tipping point by then, it wasn't meant to be. And it's so funny because I'm about almost 5 years in. And then over the past year, I've reached this exponential tipping point. And he was right. It was 2 to 5 years of fruitless labor. And so I think there's an important lesson there where you will have to commit to your dreams, the things you feel called to do, your goals, for a much longer period probably than you anticipate. And you just got to bootstrap it. You just got to do stuff yourself. You got to Google things. And again, everything just takes longer than you think it will take. And it's interesting because I'm positioned for the first time since doing this where more and more people, kind of like I mentioned, are coming to me and being like, wow, how did you do this? Especially more and more since the TEDx went viral. And that's it. That's it. I decided I was going to put in 2 to 5 years of fruitless labor, and I took one step at a time almost every day without fail. Small or big step, but something was going to inch me closer, whether I put a brick down that day or 10 bricks. I just hung in there. And I listened and I pivoted and I failed. And I invested a lot of money. I lived within my means. And that's it. It's not sexy. It's not sexy. So those are the two main lessons that I've been reflecting on is one, people's success is not a explosion of magic. Usually it's just mundane tasks. And the second thing, it's going to be 2 to 5 years of fruitless labor, and it's not sexy. And if you can commit to those two things, decide to stop comparing and to kind of leave that victim stance and take your cards at face value and then be willing to put in 2 to 5 years of fruitless labor, that goal is yours, So yeah, that's my dose of reality, and hopefully that that can give someone a perspective of what a sort of like the word like entrepreneur is so ugh, but like an entrepreneurial journey, a work for yourself journey looks like it's mundane and it's unsexy and it's hard and it's kind of lonely, but for me I would not be doing anything else with my life. There's absolutely nothing else I would be doing. And I've said this before and I'll say it again. If I was given the news that I was going to, pass in the next few weeks, I would be overjoyed with how I had lived. And the peace that comes from feeling that way, from undyingly committing to being myself and pursuing what calls me, the peace of that is just better than I can describe. Better than I can describe. And honestly, I look back at 17, 18-year-old Livy, even 11-year-old Livy, and I feel so proud of her for holding on to who she is, for holding on to who she wanted to be, for holding on to the things that sparked her and never letting go. I sit here and I reflect, and I often have a hard time saying that, but I feel so proud of the younger me's resilience and her love for herself and others. And despite what anyone said, her commitment and refusal to be anyone but Livy. And really, that is my hope with everything I do, that I can create a safe space for you and people like us to hold on to that. Because the world will purposefully and willingly strip it from you. It will purposefully and willingly strip it from you. It will strip you of your intuition. It will strip you of your callings. It will strip you of your love if you let it. And I think following a calling, being aligned in how we live, choosing love and optimism, that is a courageous choice. It's very easy to be pessimistic. It's very easy to be a victim. It's very easy to conform. And I hope that through what I do, I can help people hold on to that. Hold on to the love and pieces of themselves that are who they truly are and how important that is. Because I would love for everyone that listens to what I do and is listening to this right now to live life experiencing the same thing of, if I died, I was living as aligned as I possibly could in this moment. And that doesn't mean I was living perfectly. That doesn't mean I'm like my best self I'll ever be. But I was listening, and I was acting, and I was being and doing what I wanted. So, I appreciate you. I love making these episodes. And again, if you're interested in that Clarity Collective, the information to that is in the show notes. Registration will close pretty soon here, but I will be back not next week, but the following week with an awesome interview that I have been very excited to put out, and I think you will all really enjoy. So have a lovely week. Appreciate you. I'm rooting for you, and we'll talk soon.